Oh, my dad sent me a joke today. You guys will like this. Let me see if I can find it. Alright. Let's see, where is it? He said, if you know any girls that are anti-vax, it is now politically correct to address them as Mrs. Doubt Pfizer. And then I blocked him on Discord for like 2 hours. I hate it, chat. I hate it so bad. Welcome back, everyone. Draskyl here from a long break. We have returned. It is now time for more educational Dota content for anyone looking to improve their game. This is going to be a really short video. Just a couple of generic tips for your pubs. Just anyone who's looking to bring home the dub. Now, this is something that you can apply to all your games, regardless of what role you're playing. But we're going to talk about a handful of stuff. First and foremost, picking and the order in which you pick heroes. For those of you who are newer to the game, you're normally going to see what is referred to as the 4 and the 5 pick their heroes very early. This is because those heroes typically can do a lot with very little. So what that means is that if you're picking a support, let's say Lion, very often picked right now in the current patch. Lion's skill set is 2 stuns, a utility spell mana drain, and a nuke. So this hero does a lot with just his basic spells. If I were to pick some hero, for example, like Faceless Void, this is a carry, right? This guy has a mobility skill, time dilation is pretty good, does damage, slows people based on cooldowns, a bash proc, and then chrono. This guy kind of needs gold, right? Kind of needs gold. So what is the bad part about picking something like this early? So we just mentioned that this guy needs gold, and because he needs gold, he is going to be in a position to where he can get it. So if he has a lot of money on him and you're first picking him, what's going to happen is that other people on the enemy team are going to say, what heroes are good against this guy? Because in Dota, essentially what you're doing, in pubs at least, is you're countering the cores. Everything that you want to do is to counter the cores. So if this guy first picks and he's walking to your safe lane, then you're going to see, perhaps saves on the enemy team. You could actually see Lion into Void because he has 2 stuns and is a natural blink carrier. And more often than not, what ends up happening is that even if the guy has really good farm, his game is more difficult because the matchups in the enemy team do not favor him. So this is a very roundabout way of saying the reason why the supports pick first is because their heroes function with very little, and it does not matter as much if they get countered. So taking this logic and moving it forward a little bit, when you're in a game, the later you are picking, this is piece of advice number 2, the later you are picking, the more important it is that your pick either fits your own team as to what it wants to do, or is great against what the enemy team wants to do. If it's not either, and you planned on picking a hero, let's say last pick, regardless of what you saw, then you are a liability to your team objectively, because you're supposed to make use of the information that you see in front of you. You see 8 out of 10 heroes picked. We're talking about just normal all pick pub games. So when you're at last pick, you see 4 on the enemy team, 4 on your team. That's 8 out of 10. At that point, if you are not knowledgeable enough to make an informed decision as to what hero is going to be the best, then that just means you need to improve your matchup knowledge and you need to play more games. That's something I can't teach you in a short video. However, what I can give you is some general guidelines for what to pick. If your team does not have stuns, pick a stun. If your team has a lot of heroes who are like Void, who don't really do much without farm, try not to lean into that. As to say, don't pick another hero that's going to require space. Dota is a game of many different strategies, and more often than not, they're going to contain something called resource allocation. All this means is what heroes are going to be occupying what part of the map and how much space they need to be able to become strong. So your 1 heroes, which are typically the cores, and the 2 heroes, which are the mids, these guys going from 1 needing the most space to 2 needing a decent amount but can also create their own based on what you're picking. This dynamic has a little bit of room to shift around if you watch like pro games and stuff, but for the most part in pubs, it's pretty much a constant. So if you have too many heroes, let's say your 3 and 4 position, which are the offlane and the support, need a lot of space on top of that, then the problem that you're going to run into is nobody is going to want to fight because they all need items. So what happens is you start to lose towers, your map control dwindles, and in lower MMR games, I know they can be a bit clowny and not everything is played perfectly, but the idea is that the more heroes that you have that need space, the less likely they're going to be able to have it, because they need other heroes to fill that gap. So make sure you have a pool of heroes that can either be a space creator or ganker, whatever you want to call it, and then a hero maybe who leans a little bit more towards the farming stuff. Now I'm making this video because, as many of you may or may not know, I am low immortal, which is not amazing by any means, but there are still tons of games where I find myself in situations where people who are mid players, who are safe lane players, sometimes even offlane players, they just pick based on what they wanted to play, and they don't take into consideration what the lineup needs to be able to function. I just played a game where there was an off-lane anti-mage on my team, and I had a safe lane Medusa. Now, these two guys picked in the same phase. They picked in the same phase, and we ended up actually doing well in the early game. But what ends up happening is that those two heroes both need a ton of space, and we didn't play our timings very well. We ended up lacking a ton of damage and just lost the late game, which sounds weird, right? Like, how do you lose late game with an AM and a Medusa? Well, it's really easy. There's just not enough room for both of them. So eventually, we lose the game, and it just kind of hit me that if people don't even understand how heroes play together at this level, which is supposedly the top 1%, then there's a lot of problems, right? Anyway, the last thing before we end the video is, if you don't see a win condition in your game, it's probably because you are tilted. I see this all the time. I see games where I'm watching like random streamers, and they'll be anywhere from, let's say, 2K to like 8K. And there will be situations where I'm looking at it, and as the outside looking in, it's always easier to see a condition, right? It's like, oh yeah, you could do this, you can make this move, blah, blah, blah. When you're in-game and you're tilted, you don't see any of it. So just be aware that when you are tilted, the possibility of the game kind of just goes out the window, even if it is winnable. And I have to imagine that people watching this video want to try to win their games, at least to some degree. So I'm sure you've heard this a ton of other places. Just try to keep your tilt under control and don't let it be the thing that, makes the game end because you didn't want to try anymore. Anyway, that's it. I said it was going to be short. It's probably still too long. I hope you guys are all doing well. More videos coming to the YouTube soon. Education stuff. It's going to be fun. Hope you guys are having a nice day, and we'll see you next time.